Part 0015. Chapter 2 Super Chaos Benefit Enemy Dungeon. Magical Explorer. Reborn as a side character in a fantasy dating sim. Well, it seemed the time had finally come. The place Ms. Ruija told me about was set in some ruins, just like the Panties dungeon. Of course, I knew how to lift the seal on the dungeon, so entering it was no obstacle. That's right, I was able to delve into the Super Chaos Benefit Enemy Dungeon. We gentlemen referred to it with the acronym SCB and pronounced it like the Japanese word sukabe or pervert. Yeah, this was the pervert dungeon. On top of how the place completely ignored the vague naming conventions of the dungeons that had appeared before it, instead going with an all-English title, it was so lewd that the developers even referred to it as the pervert dungeon in official interviews. I broke the seal. Time to head in. The dungeon was also a breeze to solo. Just how easy, exactly? Well, the good thing about this place was that your stats were largely irrelevant for taking down the monsters inside. Your physical strength meant nothing here. It seriously wasn't a factor at all. In the pervert dungeon, clashes with monsters were resolved with posing battles instead of conventional fights. This cutting-edge, capital S sexy battle system was the first of its kind, and it was well received not just within Japan, but also among our overseas comrades in arms. Here's how it worked. By putting on a sexy costume and striking an alluring pose, the player dealt damage to the enemy's clothing, creating a wonderland of erotic delights. As may be obvious, the dungeon was filled with enemies of the beautiful and attractive female variety. Bwehaha. On the other hand, enemies could damage the player's outfit by striking lewd poses of their own. But much to my delight, this only extended to your clothes. Their moves didn't hurt you in the slightest. The dungeon also gave you special costumes when you entered it, and you couldn't progress through it without putting them on. This meant you got to watch sexily clad characters being stripped bit by tantalizing bit free from the fear of your favorite outfits ending up in tatters. Conversely, if you could endure going the exhibitionist route of putting your nether region on full display, you could also clear the whole dungeon by simply strolling through it in the buff. Naturally, most players tended to make their party members lose their clothes on purpose when going through the SCB dungeon. Doing so let you enjoy the beautiful rewards of the heroine's gripes at the dungeon's irrationality, their shame-induced verbal abuse to the player, and the reactions of the characters as they stared at Iori's crotch. Seeing them desperately trying to cover up their bodies was several times more arousing than simply presenting them in the nude without any hint of embarrassment. Oh, right. There was also an item you could get there if you cared about that stuff. Alas, in an extremely unfortunate turn of events, I wasn't going to be able to fully enjoy running through the SCB dungeon in this world. Just think about it. There was no way I could actually invite someone with me knowing what was to come. As such, I had sneaked off by myself to run through it. Basically, I would just have to stroll through dungeon in my birthday suit, collecting items along the way. I'd removed the seal on the dungeon, so it was time to wrap this. Huh? Kasuk. Someone called out to me from behind in this dungeon that I was supposed to have all to myself. I slowly turned around to face where this familiar, royal voice had come from. There stood Ludi, glaring at me with reproach, Yukine, wearing a forced smile, and Nanami, beaming triumphantly. WH, what are you doing here? I calmed my pounding heart as I unconsciously backed away from them. You were totally planning on running through another dungeon in secret, weren't you? We talked it over and decided we can't let you rush off on your own like this. My Eden will always be at Master's side. One of these comments was clearly out of place. I'm happy to hear that, pleased as punch, really, but this place isn't to be messed with. I'm 100% serious when I say that this dungeon is 110% danger. Let's get out of here. I took out a dungeon escape item as I said this, but it didn't respond at all. To be honest, I'd never even considered slipping out of here early before, so this was my first time learning I couldn't use them here. What's got you so panicked? Yukine gazed anxiously into my eyes. She and the others didn't know. This place is truly terrifying. Just how terrifying was the SCB dungeon exactly? Well, the scary thing was your physical strength was totally irrelevant for taking down the monsters here. Your levels didn't count for shit. Instead, clashes with monsters were resolved with posing battles. This cutting-edge, first of its kind, Capital S sexy battle system was such unbelievable crap, it couldn't be praised at all. Here's how it worked. By putting on a sexy costume and striking an alluring pose, the player dealt damage to the enemy's clothing. Talk about absurd. Once you stripped the enemy bare, they ran away. I wanted to flee myself. Conversely, the enemy could deal damage to the player's outfit by striking lewd poses of their own. However, the only thing this scuffed up was your clothes. Their attacks might not have inflicted any physical damage, but they certainly dealt a tremendous amount of psychological damage. Oh, and if you were thinking you could avoid all this by having the heroines put on layer after layer of clothing, you were mistaken. It was impossible to get through the dungeon unless everyone was wearing a pervy costume. Hey, wait a minute. All those merits I waxed on about earlier went and turned into demerits. What's up with you? I suddenly came back to reality upon seeing Ludi stare at me with concern. Sorry, it was my fault for keeping quiet. The girls were always worrying about me, and they'd come here with the best intentions. I was really happy to have them around, but I felt guilty. This place is dangerous in many senses of the word. What senses? Just what sort of dungeon is it? Faced with Yukine's and Ludi's questioning, I pondered how to explain things. Well, let's start with the name first. It's called the Super Chaos Benefit Enemy Dungeon. Super Chaos Bene? What's it now? Yukine didn't seem to catch it at all. The Super Chaos Benefit Enemy Dungeon, Yukine. That's a really weird name. An extremely astute observation. Of course, the simpler explanation was that this was the pervert dungeon. But I couldn't tell them that. So there was, that dungeon a while back. Remember? The one where you had to do those sexy poses? Of course I remember. I'd never forget that. Wait, you're not serious, are you? It looked like that was enough for Ludi and Yukine to wrap their heads around it. After a long silence, Ludi's voice came out hoarse. I couldn't bear to see her look like this, so I turned away from her. This dungeon's a powered-up version of that. When I spat out the truth, Ludi fell to the ground where she stood, while Yukine's face froze. One thing you can rest easy about is that you won't really have to take physical damage, but well, the mental damage will be unfathomable, right? That's what you're getting at, isn't it? That's why you sneaked off here alone. Well, if that was the extent of it, I wouldn't have thought much of it. That wasn't it, though. There was a system here that I could only describe as the ultimate manifestation of a certain fetish. However, it only came up in the absolute worst-case scenario, so a part of me thought it would be fine not to bring it up, since there was a chance we wouldn't have to deal with it. Takioto, I get that it's hard to talk about, but you can say it. Yukine's comment suggested the truth was showing on my face a bit. She's right. You always try to take everything on yourself. More importantly, we're all in the same boat here, right? We're ready to hear it already, so just tell us. I understand what you're trying to say, Master. The fact that you think the curves from my butt to my thighs are incredible is just... Kaya. Nope, you're way off the mark. I did acknowledge that Nanami's curves were truly divine, though. Look, if you can say that Nanami's on the wrong track, then that means there is something you aren't telling us after all. I mean, sure, that was true. But I just couldn't reveal it to them. Wouldn't it be more dangerous to waltz on into the dungeon without saying anything? As long as you don't fill us in, Master, I won't be able to come up with a plan to stop whatever's coming. Nanami didn't just have a point here, she had all the points. I could understand where she was coming from, but would I actually be able to tell the girls what lay in store? That would require trying to explain the advanced level eroge nonsense of this place to a normal person. No way they would understand that level of intense fetish brain rot. I guess you're right. I really did need to let them in on it, didn't I? Let's see, well, for kids to grow up big and strong, they gotta eat, they gotta drink a lot of milk, that sort of stuff, right? That's just how things work, so I don't think it's done out of malice, really. He's gotten incoherent. I have a terrible feeling about this. Looks like I should charge up my maid power then. Nanea. Well anyway, so... It's a totally natural bodily function, and a necessary part of development, right? So I don't really want you to worry too much, but... Just spit it out already. It was time to steel my nerves. If you get hit with an additional attack after your clothes are tattered, you'll start lactating. Lactating. Oh, that's all? Lactating, huh? Tee-hee-hee-hee-hee. Ha 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 ha. Tee-hee. Eep. Just how many times had Ludi screamed by now? Her voice echoed louder than any monster's roar and pierced straight through my heart. Stupid, right? It's totally stupid, isn't it? How am I supposed to think of it as anything else? It's extremely and utterly stupid, okay? Stupid, stupid, stupid. Just so very stupid, teehee. Heh heh. Please. I don't care anymore. Just tell me it's stupid. Stupid, 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 stupid. Ludi was coming apart at the seams. In the few seconds since I broke the news, her emotions had been bouncing up and down like a bungee cord. I had to get her to settle down a little bit and calm my damn self while I was at it. I mean, even Yukine had her hand over her chest and was turning her body away from me here. JJ, just stay cool, okay? You'll only produce the milk for a day. It won't go on for a week or anything like that. That fact that we'll lactate at all is the problem here. One day is too many. That was fair. But listen. Apparently, the dungeon actually activates the cells in your body when it starts the milk-producing function, and you could see that is good for your health, so really. That's not the point. I don't care about that. Incidentally, the developers made it so that drinking the milk restores your HP. Like hell I could mention that right now. I couldn't even imagine what would happen if I did. Damn it. The only person here who could get this situation under control was Nanami, who looked completely unconcerned right now. When I glanced at her, she nodded and said, "You could use some help, Master." She came up to me. "I'd like to confirm something first. Is the breast milk light with a clean finish? Or full-bodied with a strong finish? Don't make things even more chaotic. This subject's already delicate enough as it is. Light with a clean finish. Give me a break. We're talking about breast milk, not a Bordeaux. One of humankind's great mysteries and a blessing of nature." This half-hearted, superficial banter was going to turn Nanami into the enemy of breast milk fetishists everywhere. Personally, I think the creamier, the better. Don't you agree, Master? Stop. Don't. Ask me to agree with you. For some reason, my response came out all stilted. But hold on, where did she get off choosing a third option? Wait. No, that wasn't important here. Damn it, what are we supposed to do? Please, please, don't fret, Master. Even if you can't drink it all in one sitting, refrigerating or freezing it can preserve it for a while. Look, I'm not asking about how to preserve the stuff. The fact that it's coming out at all is the issue here. Why was Nanami assuming I was going to be drinking it in the first place? Jokes aside, it's really quite simple. We just need to make sure we don't get hit. Well, that was true, but even so. And in the worst case scenario, you can just DRI. La 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 la, Leo idea. As I drowned out Nanami's voice with my own, Ludi closed in on her. Then she grabbed her maid outfit. Why the hell are you so composed about all this, Nanami? Now that Ludi mentioned it, Nanami had been just as unperturbed in the last lewd dungeon, too. I have heard of dungeons where adult activities can strengthen one's abilities, so I'm not surprised that a dungeon like this also exists. I'd say we're lucky that the effect doesn't make us 3,000 times more sensitive, at least. Only ninjas from a certain somewhere would have been able to handle that. Actually, those girls couldn't handle it for the most part, either. Nanami's right. We just have to march ahead and avoid the worst-case scenario. Gotta steel ourselves, Yukine said, patting Ludi on the shoulder. Ludi let go of Nanami's clothes and let her arms fall limply to her side. She wore the face of someone who'd sank their life savings into crypto. Hey, did you know? She's actually an elven imperial princess. The body produces breast milk after giving birth to provide the baby with nourishment to grow big and strong. A natural principle, known to all. However, you couldn't apply that pedestrian perspective on breast milk to the world of Orochi. In those games, characters didn't need to have given birth to start lactating. It was par for the course. Each eroge had their own internal logic on the subject, and whether breast milk came out was decided based on that. Put simply, the presence or absence of breast milk was entirely at the discretion of the director or scenario writer. Moreover, in the world of eroge, breast milk was sort of like a poisonous drug. Sometimes, those mystical drops of life were revered and praised, while at other times, they would be reviled. It was a contentious issue. Developers even put breast milk settings you could toggle on or off in some games to please both camps. There were also times when this setting wouldn't only affect breast milk, but it would also hide semen or other mysterious fluids. Hold on, though, none of this was important. The problem was what we needed to do to ensure there wouldn't be any breast milk today. First, we have to choose which path to go down. Our options are... they're written over there, I said, before leading the other three to a location that looked to have some type of explanation written on it. In the pervert dungeon, you first chose which situation, which floor to head to, and they were all optimized in unique ways. Let's see, our options are: Orthodox, deserted late-night park. Ordnance-designated city labyrinth, downtown alleyway. Stand there and pull up your skirt, beside a conference room table. Are you free after school? Dilapidated old schoolhouse. Mystery of life, grassland brimming with liberation. That's it. You've got to be joking, Ludi spat out. The developers were absolutely playing around. Personally, I liked Are You Free After School? Dilapidated old schoolhouse, the most. Incidentally, if you cleared all the stages in game, 2 extra floors unlocked, no stopping once things get started, limited express train, and unexplored bookstore aisle, technical book section. These were both difficult, and I had quite a hard time with them on my first visit. A lot of them sound like the sort of places exhibitionists salivate over. Nanami was right on the money. I think the developer probably thought up the exhibitionist situations first, then made up this dungeon to accommodate them. Okay, I can admit it, it was genius on their part, but also an absolute disaster. So which do we choose? I asked, prompting an answer from Yukain. Let's go with Mystery of Life, grassland brimming with liberation, since it sounds like the most spacious and will let us keep close watch of our surroundings. I thought that was a pretty good choice. When it came to pure clearing difficulty, Orthodox, deserted late-night park was also a decent option. Not that I said that out loud in case the girls mistook that to mean I was interested in that sort of thing. I couldn't exactly deny it, for starters. With our destination set, we stepped inside the magic circle. The first thing we saw after we teleported was a treasure chest. With a certain something inside it, of course. I have a terrible feeling about this. Yukain was right on the mark. She opened up the chest and let out a very large sigh. Not these outfits again, she mumbled, looking through several different pieces of clothing. Her voice, mixed with embarrassment and a slight feeling of frailty, was fantastic. However, it seemed she and Ludi had grown a bit more accustomed to these sorts of erotic situations after experiencing them a number of times, because they merely grumbled with displeasure as they changed their clothes. If this kept up, they might eventually don a super micro bikini without a single complaint. It made me feel guilty. It was as though I was gradually conditioning them to be like this. After quickly wrapping up our clothing change, we went into the next magic circle. Aren't you embarrassed in that outfit, Kusuk? Ludi, Yukain, and Nanami were all in bunny suits. The girls had worn the outfits before, and they were pretty easy to move around in. Ludi bashfully tried to hide herself with her hands, but she couldn't conceal that gorgeous body of hers. If anything, her trying to hide herself in embarrassment only made things even sexier. Yukain seemed to be just as uncomfortable, her face a little pink. However, she stood up straight and dignified. In complete contrast, Nanami and I weren't showing the slightest hint of shame. I've gone through so much embarrassment at this point I've just gotten used to it. I had gone through something like this before, so wearing this sort of stuff didn't faze me at this point. Besides, compared to everyone's bunny suits, a see-through top was nothing at all. Actually, I had a few questions for the designer of this outfit, given we hadn't even begun to progress through the dungeon and my nipples were already out for all the world to see here. What about you, Nanami? At Yukine's question, my maid rubbed her face with her hands like a cat. Kaya, master, don't look at me. Nanabunny's so embarrassed I can feel my face burning. Hippity hop. So even more extreme, then, Yukine muttered with a sigh. I could sort of understand where she was coming from. Come on now. Don't shake your butt like that, Nanami. I would have loved to have my face smacked by that fluffy tail.